stuff ready? There you go. Right, I'm looking at the internationalization of South African companies. And we specifically look at the hardwood industry because we had to look at one industry that is something, well, everything is needed in the world. But before I start, I just want to say, and I just want to make sure that we understand the difference between internationalization and globalization. We researched it and we found that the two concepts is that the internationalization is the intensification of international connections and exchanges, and globalization, the expansion of these processes to the point where unconnected regions become similar in a unity. In other words, becoming finally the company. So internationalization, sorry that I'm struggling over my words, is where our South African participates in regional initiatives, such as the tripartite free. I just want to remove you here that I can't see you. That covers my screen. The tripartite free trade area and under the African Union Agenda of 2063. So we are also a member of the South African Development Corporation and all the blocks in our Southern African area. That is everything beyond the SADC countries. We also participate in the bilateral agreements such as the African Growth and Opportunity Act and the EU SADC Economic Partnership Agreement between South Africa, Botswana, Lesotho, Namibia, Mozambique, and Swaziland. This was established in 2014 with the European Union. We also have further existing trade agreements, such as the European Free Trade Union, and I think this one is very important, that we have a free trade European agreement. As well, and this was developed already in the year 2000. As part of our South African economics pursuit to promote economic growth, we also, or the South African economy also look at regional integration. So it's also important for us in South Africa to have this trade corridors between Cape Town and Gauteng, Durban and Gauteng, and all the other provinces. Now, I just want to make sure for people who don't know South Africa, we are divided into 9 provinces, where our main province, as far as trade is concerned, is in Gauteng, and also proportionally the biggest number of people who stay there. Our most beautiful province, obviously, as you know, is Cape Town, or the Western Cape. Now, when we look at the export from South Africa, there's an increasing demand for South African goods and services. This we found not only in the hardwood industry, but all over. People want to buy goods from South Africa. Now, it's quite amazing to see that people still can't identify the difference between other African countries and South Africa. You know, when we go overseas, we always smile at people asking us, do you know my cousin? He lives in Kenya. Well, Kenya is about 1,000 kilometers from us, so now I won't know your cousin. In South Africa, we are a small country, but do have a lot of interesting goods that can be exported. We focused on the exporting of hardwood products. I just want to quickly identify hardwood products is where you have your hard cells, and not like pine kernels, which is a softer wood, but a hardwood, it's a hard seed that is actually used. Hardwood products will be, for example, eucalyptus trees, which are formerly from Australia and was actually is not a product from South Africa, but now we've taken it over. So when we export, it's important for us to look at the volume of the world exports that has grown enormously to such an extent that various industries depend on the international trade. We are depending on exporting, like you know, in any country, but also importing. So the importance of information of the country of destination is assist us to understand what is needed. The integrated national export strategy in South Africa prioritizes high growth emerging markets, especially in the BRICS countries, as South Africa is part of that BRICS collateral. When we look at the export opportunities to Europe, although there are many suitable and cost-competitive substitutes for hardwood, made, for example, from fossil fuels, which are becoming increasingly more available, the major advantage of wood is still the fact that it is environmental friendly. However, we have to look at tree felling and any other degeneration contributing to the increase in our atmospheric emission of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide, the history of carbon dioxide is also very interesting. I know I'm going off my point, but a tree may be chopped down and the carbon dioxide will still remain in the roots. But the minute that you remove the roots, the carbon dioxide that was actually taken in from the atmosphere is then immediately released. That's why in the plantations, under conditions where it is controlled, you will always find that the roots of the previous trees are still there. Oh, I've lost my trail now, what I wanted to say to you. The trade agreements that we have is also obviously our non-tariff measures that we also will be participating in. In this research, we've looked at a qualitative research approach. In other words, looking at a case study, because we were looking at one specific product and one specific company. So we relied a lot on documents that we analyzed within that research. The case study research was selected, focusing on a specific situation, understanding what is happening in that environment. We looked at our literature analysis as well as semi-structured interviews. We in total, sorry, I've gone too far. We in total interviewed 25 participants out of a possibility of 230 with 100% participation. And our quality of the interviews was absolutely remarkable. We could, as we say, we tunnel into the questions and found a lot of information. The qualitative research was then used to develop a quantitative model, which was quite interesting in our research, using our qualitative to develop a quantitative model. Our semi-structured interviews there were quite a lot of extensive notes, and to such an extent that we can publish more on the information that we received from those participants. Our document analysis was heterogeneous data that was produced by research, not by us. Therefore, documents that already existed were also applied with looking keeping in mind, the accessibility for viewing and the relevance to our research topic. You can find a lot of physical data, but it's not always relevant to our study. Now, the empirical results that we had or that we found was that export to European countries from South Africa, in Europe, it is still, the hardwood industry is still dominated by small and medium-sized sawmills, indicating the value chain not available and organizations therefore not in control of the production process. It was quite amazing to see, even in Germany, where they have the biggest plantations, that it's only small sawmills that takes over the process, other than what we have here in South Africa, our big sawmills. Various categories influencing the export to the European countries will obviously be influenced by what is expected and what do they want in that country. One of our biggest problems that we found in the European countries was the lessening of illegal logging, as well as the establishment of sustainable forestry and forest management practices. Now, in lieu of that, we have in South Africa what we call the FSC certification, where it is the forestry safety certification. And 80% of the commercial plantations in South Africa do have that FSC certification. If we export any of our wood products to the European countries, they expect from us to have this FSC certification. Then changes in those various subcategories were also influenced by the changes of the targeted countries. What are their gross domestic product? Also, what do they expect in importing and exporting? The major competitors in these countries are still from the East Bloc, from the Eastern countries, such as Vietnam, China, and also India to a certain extent. The EU timber regulations, they expect from us that forestry stewardship certification, as I said, and that absolutely indicate or do undercut everything that is needed. Then our findings, we developed a model to make a decision to which country you want to export. And I'm only going to show you one part of our model, which is economic growth in the export country. And here we looked at the market size per country by looking at the average production per country, the average import per country, and the average export per country. So your market size will then be per country compared with the average consumption. It's no use looking only at your market size, but also looking at your consumption. So the market size, we looked at the country, the year, the production, import, exports, and then your average for this. So we look at each one of the countries that we want to export to. We only looked at 3 countries, that was Germany, Belgium, and Holland, the Netherlands.
Professor Bronkhorst, sorry to interrupt. If you may please sum up a little quickly.
Okay. We looked at each one of these over 3 years, and we came to the conclusion, and we made an extensive conclusion on how this affects my export. And our biggest effect is transportation. Transportation from one port to the others is more or less 5,000 Rand, which is not a lot for you, but for us it's quite a number of a lot of money. And then I just want to add that rail transport to the port does not exist anymore in South Africa. We have a big problem with our infrastructure. Therefore, our transportation cost, looking at all the variables, will then give me my total outcome. A recommendation is that all the European countries are possible export markets for the wood, and it's recommended rather to concentrate on exports of wood products to the Netherlands. We found that that was the best, whereas the other countries, as I indicated, rely on China, Vietnam, and India. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Bronkhorst. We have some questions, please, a quick round of questions. Okay, Professor, I have a small question. Yes. In the era of globalization, why did you choose the internationalization of your product? I mean,
we work together with one of the biggest companies in South Africa that produce hardwood and also export hardwood. So it was part of what they wanted to know, what was going on and how are they going to make a decision on deciding which countries to go to. So in this decision-making model, we looked at all the aspects that will influence them to go to another country or to export to another country. They're already one of the biggest exporters of avocado pears, as well as mangoes and macadamia nuts. So this company wanted to increase the internationalization and globalization.
Okay, thank you.